Welcome to FreightWaves Today. It is another jam-packed show. It is Tuesday. Julie, I got to tell you, this is August. Your kids are about to go back to school. Are you excited?
I am, yeah. We meet the teacher this evening, and they go back on Thursday.
Oh,
the summer flew by.
You seem sad about it. My wife is not. My wife would put them into camps all summer. No, I can't believe summer's over.
Both. Yeah, I just feel like summer went by really quickly, and I don't know that we enjoyed it quite as much.
You were a little busy.
A little busy.
But
I'll be happy to be back in the routine, certainly. But I'm not looking forward to getting everyone dressed and out the door every morning.
Well, there is that. You know, this is also college football season is starting. That's what I always look forward to. So I can't believe it's August. It's really crazy. You know, the freight market's a bit quiet, and we've talked about it. What is interesting, and you're going to get into this, the ISM data is actually quite robust, which it does tell us this manufacturing recovery that we've been talking about, that the freight data has been revealing, is being affirmed by, again, the ISM data, which is it's interesting how much it has lagged. Like, we started to see the industrial recovery in November, ISM. I expected it to be a little stronger earlier, but there's no doubt about it that the industrial economy is certainly recovering.
Yeah, I mean, this is the 7th month in a row, I believe, of continued expansion. So it's certainly continuing to move in that direction.
All year. We saw it in November. The freight data really was in November when we started to see the turnaround in freight demand. We started to see tender projections really light up. And remember, it was the week before Thanksgiving is when the market all seemed to just, you know, and we've had this in the past where there's been a significant change in direction, unexpected change in direction. I always call the data science team, like, is the data right? Yeah. Like, did we lose a feed? Did something get miscalculated?
Something get counted twice, yeah.
But not this time, and it turned out to be right. In fact, most of the times, it's not a data feed problem, and in fact, that's the majority. It's just, you know, how fast it is just somewhat unexpected.
Right.
Well, we have a lot to talk about. In studio, we have Laura Ritchey. She is the CEO of GEODIS. Drove in from Nashville this morning. GEODIS is one of the world's largest logistics companies. She's going to talk about what they're saying across their client base. We also have the one and only Kevin Nolan. He's a man that brings a lot of energy. So we might have to add 5 or 10 minutes just because Kevin brings a lot of energy and a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
Gene Seroka, Port of LA director, is going to tell us all about what they're expecting in the latter half of the year. You know, this is the time of year when retail holiday imports start to flow in. It's wouldn't call it the peak season, but it's really pre-season to the peak season. Mm-hmm. And that really is, nobody who's sort of better on the front end of that than Gene Seroka knows what's happening. We're going to talk about, Eric Kulisch has got a great story on these ghost fleet of Lufthansa freighters and talk about logistics robots. So we have a jam-packed.
And we have John Brooks, the CEO of Warehouse on Wheels. We're talking about trailers as well.
Talk about trailers. They are moving warehouses. So all of that today. Stay with us.
We kick things off with a manufacturing surge that's creating serious momentum across the freight landscape. July's manufacturing data returned a 55.6 reading for the Institute for Supply Management's manufacturing PMI, 2.3 percentage points above June and the highest reading since May 2022. A reading above 50 signals expansion, and July marked the 7th straight month of expansion for the dataset. The update was 1.6 points ahead of analysts' expectations and consistent with real GDP growth of 2.8%. The new orders sub-index, an indicator of future activity, was also higher for a 7th consecutive month at 56.7, and demand sentiment around orders improved to a ratio of 3.5 to 1 positive to negative comments. This manufacturing recovery is showing up directly in less than truckload volumes, with 4 publicly traded LTL carriers reporting tonnage up 2.6% year over year in the second quarter on average, and preliminary results for July showing tonnage growth of 5.1% year over year. Meanwhile, drivers who hauled for STG Logistics in New Jersey are eligible for a piece of a more than $2.2 million payout, following the resolution of a major driver misclassification case. The total cash payout in the settlement is $2.775 million, with $2.2 million going to drivers and the $555,000 balance to be paid to New Jersey in both penalties and contributions to the Unemployment Compensation and State Disability Benefits funds. The settlement document puts the total value of the settlement at slightly more than $80.9 million. But most of that big figure will disappear into STG's recently concluded Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceeding that cut its debt load by 90%. The state agencies said the suit against STG, which dates back to 2023, was the first filed under a 2021 law that allowed litigation against employers that New Jersey believes had misclassified workers who were effectively full-time employees as independent contractors. Drivers eligible for a payout can receive an amount based on their earnings from January 1st, 2017 to the present as a lump sum. Finally, a strategic investment is expanding global wide-body cargo capacity in the air freight sector. Atlas Air Worldwide Holdings has completed its transaction to take a 49% stake in Iceland-based Air Atlanta, the all-cargo carrier and lessor announced on Monday. As part of the deal, Atlas Air Worldwide subsidiary Titan Aviation acquired the 14 wide-body freighter aircraft owned by Air Atlanta Group of companies and leased them back to Air Atlanta, which will continue to operate the aircraft. Air Atlanta's CEO and vice presidents acquired a 51% controlling interest in the operating companies. Between its Iceland and Malta certified airlines, Air Atlanta operates 18 wide-body aircraft and owns 14 of them, 12 Boeing 747-400 cargo jets, 2 Boeing 777-300 passenger-to-freighter conversions, and 4 777 passenger jets.
Well, when we talk about all of the things happening, Julie, I think a lot of it is just there's so much activity in the air market, the air capacity, international semiconductors, the fact that Taiwan is now a bigger, on a dollar basis, a trading partner than China. I just think that's why we're seeing so much growth there.
Yeah, and when you look at, and we could talk more detail about it, the ISM data, I mean, the commodities that are in short supply are a lot of those things, electrical components, semiconductors, all of the things that are being used for those AI data centers that we're importing.
One of the sort of feedbacks in some of the comments that were made was that the supply chain, in particular electronic components, actually is tighter than it was during COVID. I think it's just a sign that, the White House came out yesterday and talked about the fact that when we look at import activity, a lot of what they would call the quality of imports, these capital good investments, have far exceeded traditional consumer imports. And they use the example of like stuffed teddy bears. We're not importing those as many, but we're importing big capital goods. And I think it's just a sign of exactly what's happening in the economy. And it's a really interesting, and to talk about that specifically in the international market, we have Laura Ritchey here from Nashville. She is the president and CEO of GEODIS. She just completed her first year. GEODIS is a massive company, 20,000 employees in the US, 230 sites. Laura, welcome to FreightWaves Today.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Julie.
We're so excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about this reconfiguration of the economy. ISM's manufacturing data is incredibly robust. A lot of that is AI data centers and big infrastructure build out. But what are you guys seeing right now?
We're scratching our head because we're seeing all sorts of things. So we have customers who are doing really well. They're seeing sales up double digits, 30, 40%. And then we have others who, maybe aren't seeing the same thing. And I think a lot of it depends on who their customers are. So we're staying really close to those forecasts. We definitely see in big tech the challenges about the shortage of chips and the ability to get things over here. So we're planning to help them manage that.
Now, is it hard to get airlift capacity? Is that tight right now due to just all of the semiconductors and memory chips that are coming over?
It is, although I would say what we're still seeing is ocean continues to be a challenge as well. So with all the blank sailings that are happening, the port congestion, we're seeing things actually get stuck more on the ocean side. And then air capacity's there, you just have to be willing to pay for it.
There's a price for everything. The interesting thing on the ocean side is that ocean spot rates are up, over 300% in just the last 5 months. What is it? Obviously, blank sailings are peaks to that. The international ocean container lines have such market power. Is it just that they are just trying to control price or at least manage price? Is that really what's happening?
I think there's that, but I do think obviously with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, that's impacting it. Threats in the Red Sea are impacting it as well. So, we saw the Port of India very congested and it's taken some while to clear that out. We just have a huge backlog now of goods. We have product that we've been trying to book, since March that's still rolling. in July. And for people in the manufacturing space where they need these things on their assembly line, they're not too happy.
And that's in the
about
international shipping, just doesn't have
Absolutely.
capacity to provide it.
It is, or it's the spot rate you're willing to pay, as you talked about, right? So we aren't seeing quite the COVID levels, but a container is a lot more expensive than it was just a few months ago.
Well, the ocean container lines, no crisis averted. They always have take the opportunity to raise price. It does create a significant issue and strain. One of the things that is coming through some of the survey data, you're on the board of the Federal Reserve out of Nashville, the Atlanta Fed. A lot of conversation about this sort of the have and have-nots economy. Housing is down significantly, or at least soft compared to where it has been. But then you get into these electronic components, into heavy manufacturing. We covered every week with just how strong the railroad volumes are. What are other parts of the economy that are doing well outside of this big electronic AI data center build out?
I still think we're seeing strength in retail, certain areas of retail. So apparel has actually been up, even on an inflation basis, adjusted basis. We have customers that are telling us, they were making it on price, but they're actually seeing more units start to move through. So I think if your brand is well positioned and you have value, you're personalizing the customer experience, customers are staying. Some people say that they're shopping, right, to kind of alleviate the sadness about the economy in general. And we're definitely seeing some of that. They're trading off on, how often they fill up their gas tank to maybe have a splurge. We do see in housing improvements, though, that is a little bit down. New housing starts are obviously down, so that's something we see. But yeah, it's very uneven, and it makes it hard to predict across the board.
I will tell you that the number of packages arriving to my house each week, absolutely, if you graphed it in tandem with my stress level, you could tell last week must have been tough because there's a lot.
Then my wife must be really stressed out because we get a lot of those packages.
Statistical correlation there.
People are getting, Craig's favorite topic, people are getting skinny, so they have to buy new clothes.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We're a big fan of the GLP-1s here.
Yes.
It's a big recurring topic. A couple of weeks ago, one of our guests is in a retail liquidation, particularly CPG, as well as retail. And it was interesting because what she described is that apparel is doing exceptionally well as people downsize.
Yes.
But the foods products are actually, particularly the unhealthier food or foods that we all kind of love to splurge on, are not doing as well. And it was interesting to sort of see the fact that apparel, like as a GLP-1 user, I have gone through a number. That's the worst part of this whole thing.
Oh, I say it's the best part.
Exactly.
For some of
New
us.
clothes?
Yeah.
Except when you get the bill, it is. How many times? The problem is
You know how much worse it would be to have to keep buying new clothes because you were outgrowing them, though?
Yeah.
Than to buy
well,
new
that's
clothes
true. But the problem is, as soon as I buy a jacket, it feels like a couple months later it's too big as you continue to slim out. So.
Well, but we all needed a clothing refresh, I feel like, after COVID, right? When you had the
That's so true.
sweatpants
Oh,
on
that's
and
true.
you had to say, okay, is the stuff I was wearing in 19 really worth it
It
anymore?
feels like at first people were still in the COVID casual
Yes,
mode. And then
yes.
over time, the more professional people come back to the office. Just how different it is. So you've been in Nashville for a year.
Yes.
What exactly has that experience been like at GEODIS in terms of this is you've been in a number of different companies across the supply chain. What has specifically attracted you to GEODIS?
Well, I think, one, when you say I've been in Nashville for a year, I'm like, I visit once in a while, but mostly I've been on the road, right? So, but when I looked at GEODIS, what I really liked is we have the international ownership. So we're owned by SNCF, which is the French railroad. And that really gives us a stability, right? A financial stability, a solid base from which to grow, and then scale. So the ability to work with customers across all three regions, which is how we divide up the country, and then finally meeting the teammates. So I always insist that you do in-person interviews, even during COVID. I did that when I changed roles, because I think it's meeting people and saying, is this a place I want to work? Do I think that, I can add value here and see myself as part of the team? And so it's been a lot of fun. It's a surprisingly vast, though, amount of warehouses, right? So 230 locations, counting freight forwarding and warehousing. And so trying to tackle that has been a bit of a challenge. I've made a dent in a year, but certainly more to go.
The scale of it is quite. How do you prioritize in terms of your time, in terms of what you're focusing on with so much scale? Is your goal to visit all the locations or the main offices, or how do you think about it?
Yeah, for me, it's really understanding the business. And so what I kind of laid out is we have a freight forwarding, we have the contract logistics and the transportation business. So what do I need to know? Is going to a freight forwarding office giving me the ability to learn the business? Sort of yes, sort of no, right? But I have the ability to do that more remote. The warehouses you really have to see because we have a scale of automation. And so seeing from the least automated to the most automated, and then our transportation hubs obviously operate sort of like warehouses, but also as transportation around, cross-docking and things. So I wanted to make sure I could see and touch all of that. But my favorite thing to do is go and don't do anything they've said, right? So don't follow the tour path. Don't talk to the associates that they're pushing out in front. Certainly make nice, but to make sure you go the places where maybe somebody didn't want you to go, more because I just want to learn what's happening. What are their challenges? I appreciate the nice red carpet that gets rolled out for the CEO, but how do you really get your fingers on the pulse?
Are we going to see you on Undercover Boss? Is that
Yeah, I did
That
think
would
of
be
that
awesome.
because now they do start to know you after a year, so it's a lot harder. You definitely would have to do more
I
disguising.
watched that show. Have you seen it, Julie?
Yeah.
I watched the show and I'm like, how do these people not? You have a camera crew, maybe
Yes.
in the first couple of episodes.
Right.
But it just feels like it is put on for TV. So I don't know if it's real or not.
I don't know. I think that they're telling. I mean, we film stuff in the warehouses all the time. We have customers doing things, so I think we could
So
do
you think
it.
it's legit?
I think so.
We need to get you on
Yeah.
Undercover Boss so we can all root for whenever there's someone on for The Bachelor. My wife is a big
Yes.
reality TV connoisseur, we'll say. The Bachelorette or Bachelor that's in freight, we're always rooting
Yes.
for them.
Yeah.
This is like, this is one of us.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
So you've clearly done this tour. You have talked a lot about like listening being the most important part,
Right.
seeing the parts of the business that might not be what is necessarily brought to you, the
Yes.
shiny parts of it. What surprised you most? What did you learn?
Really the passion of our teammates. And I know probably everyone says that, but my questions are always like, if I gave you a magic wand, what would you do differently? And all of their asks were, we have a security system for one of our customers who requires it. And they're like, could you put a bathroom in closer to us? Because it would be easier for all of us. And so they're always so thoughtful about what's meaningful for the teammate. They could have said, pay me more. They could have said, give me more perks or benefits. And even when I asked the people who came from another provider, why did you come here? They're like, because I heard it was a great place. I joke we have a fair amount of boomerangs, right? People who leave and think, oh, maybe I'll try somewhere else. And then, they come back a couple years later, which was great because they get the experience outside, but really GEODIS is their home.
it is interesting. I think the days of, hey, this person's left and we're,
Right.
that's the old school transportation way. Get out
Yes.
and don't come back. It is rewarding when someone comes back after they've had the chance to sort of realize that things
Exactly.
aren't as good.
Yeah.
Because I think in business you get so frustrated. I always tell folks on our team is like, you're going to get frustrated at times. And sometimes it's better to see that it isn't as great as you think it is going to be.
That's right. I tell my kids that all the time, but that's a tough lesson to learn. So I'm like, you should go learn it then.
Yeah.
Don't listen to just us. You experience it, see what something else is. You'll learn, maybe you'll bring things back. Plus our industry is so small. So, people that you worked with 20 years ago come back again, and you need to make sure that you were a professional. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So you talked about getting past sort of those surface level issues. And I read that you use the 5 whys
Yes.
to do that. Can you walk us through what those are and,
Sure.
and then some outcomes of that?
So it's really the Toyota production system, right? And what they were doing when they were diagnosing issues on the assembly line was saying, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And that's really how you get to the root cause. So a lot of it is just continuing to ask why. Otherwise, we solve service issues. Right now, we're launching several new clients. Of course, there's always bumps and bruises when that happens. And it's really saying like, oh, it's easy to say, well, we didn't have this or we didn't do this, but is that really the issue? Like what's really happening?
So getting to the root,
That's
not
right.
just the
That's right.
initial symptom,
That's right.
but the actual cause.
Yes. And then actually fix it. Like don't do it again. One of the things I love about our business is we seem to like Groundhog Day, where you've done it and then you do it again and then you do it again. So I'm like, let's learn from it. Let's carry that forward. Let's not repeat it.
It's a great reference. I love that movie. It's
Yes.
it was one of my favorite movies. I watched it a lot of times. You created a client experience organization earlier this year. What exactly does a client experience organization do?
Well, I was studying some other industries that were really focused on customer loyalty and developing the customer journey, which would be brands, airlines have done that, and said our customer experience or our client experience is fragmented. So continuous improvement, which helps the customer get better, we get better with serving the customer. Our data and analytics team that does all of the analytics was fragmented. The actual account management team who manages the day-to-day was all separate. So what we're trying to do is really pull that together and say, similar to how a brand would own the customer journey, that's really what we're focused on. So from the moment you say, maybe I want to work with GEODIS, then that's part of the journey to say, and of course you'll want to stay.
So what were the businesses you looked at inspiration? Any favorite sort of lessons from those that you took into GEODIS?
So American Airlines is a great example of doing this, where they had, challenges. They were receiving ratings about their customer service. And as they studied it, what they realized is similarly their journey was fragmented, right? They put it in what was natural to how the airline operated best. Instead of what was best for the customer. And I found that that's kind of how we were thinking too, right? Like, let's put data and analytics with IT because we'll call that a tech thing.
Right.
Let's put continuous improvement in the engineering team because that's where engineers go, versus saying, what is the customer experience with us, throughout our journey together, and how do we really point that? And then I had it report to me because I think that's the difference. Sometimes we put it in operations, sometimes we put it in sales, and that makes the organization sort of become not neutral, right?
They have a bias to give you
Exactly.
their own perspective,
That's right.
the truth. And of course, AI has makes this data far more actionable. And I think one of the interesting things about AI is that you can build your processes around the technology build the technology around your processes versus the other way around, which is quite unique. And I know you guys, I got to spend time with your team at Pallet, had a World Cup. I know you guys are huge soccer fans at GEODIS. I got to spend time with some of your folks down in Miami. And I know you guys are doing some stuff with AI. What exactly are you implementing?
So we're doing a couple different things. So we're doing what you would see and expect most people are, right? Which is taking all of these processes, all of the data, all of the shipment data, all of the management of truckers and things like that, and turning that into being more managed by AI, right? It's process heavy, so it lends itself to that. The other place that we're really thinking about it, though, is in training and upskilling our teammates, particularly as we continue to go further into automation. It's really helping to be able to train teammates. I think we're up to 30 plus languages now that our teammates speak, and we just haven't, had the robustness to be able to interact with them in their own language and to be able to really lead the business forward. And then some other stuff I can't talk about yet.
We track all the public earnings and conference calls. We have pods set to basically go out. Julie and I sort of manage this process where it goes out and listens to all the calls, the conference calls of the public companies. 72 public companies in supply chain logistics we track. The most bullish consistently is Prologis.
Yes.
What's happening in the warehouse space is absolutely, they're always ranked. We have Claude's own ranking. It provides a ranking system based on a couple of metrics, but it's consistently, they're the most bullish of all the public companies. What is special about warehousing right now? Why would they be enormously bullish?
Well, I think there's a couple things, right? So we're going to have to bring up the data center word. So if you look at Prologis, they have a huge a huge land bank. So they have the ability, right, to really do warehousing and do data centers in a big way. But data centers is creating now a supply chain issue that we didn't have before. So data centers are being built outside the normal supply chain structure. So even if you talk about like building them, once they're constructed, there are not a lot of warehouses nearby to do fast supply of repair parts. There's not a lot of infrastructure to support the teammates that are going to work. So it's actually creating a problem. Warehouses, people believe, have expanded outside of the city limits, but now the data centers are going farther. And so if they're positioned to have both the warehousing and the data centers, I don't want to speak on behalf of Dan, but that's really, I think, why they continue to be bullish about that.
Yeah, it is interesting. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about the whole supply chain, the need if you have this $100 million or even multi-billion-dollar investment, you need to make sure it runs.
And it's in
Exactly.
the middle of nowhere in many
Exactly.
cases, because that's where they
It's getting
can.
pushed out. I mean,
Yes.
so many municipalities and cities, and even some states are banning data centers.
Yes.
And so you're wanting to be out away from cities because
That's right.
the zoning. I mean, even Hamilton County, which is a very conservative county here in Chattanooga, put a moratorium on all data centers. which
Well,
I
and then
think
if you're going to, yeah, I agree. Sorry. And then if you're going to do nuclear to power them,
yeah.
which everyone's
Totally.
talking about. Yeah.
Tennessee is where all this
It
action
is.
is happening.
It
We keep
is.
telling people it's
Yes.
great down here in the South. TVA is leading that.
They are.
TVA deserves a lot of credit.
Yes.
They have really built this entire region. Helped win World War II. So, yeah, the whole Oak
to know.
Ridge TVA, it was the reason we could produce so much aluminum
Okay.
and the atomic bomb. So,
To study my Tennessee history.
we're big. I'm
Yeah.
a big
Craig's a
history
huge
buff.
history. So, speaking of technology and moving beyond AI, I've read that you've said that visibility is just not enough anymore. So, tell me what you mean by that, and what else is needed.
Well, I joke that we've been talking about supply chain visibility for as long as
Ever.
I have been
Yes.
working, and somehow
Yes.
we still don't have it in an easy way. But I think the new buzzwords are orchestration, right? Like the ability to not only have the data, but actually be predictive, and not just predictive in the way of like, oh, this order is going to sell to this store, so I should put it close, but actually say, this is a disruption, here's what I'm going to do about it. So we've seen some early pilots around the ability to do that and do that without much human intervention. But you think about if there's a physical flow and a data flow, and a lot of what 3PLs do is a data flow, what are we going to do in 2 or 3 years when the data can be managed by AI, right? All the transactional data. It's going to be about how we orchestrate, how we actually get more predictive. I read something on LinkedIn over the weekend where somebody said delivery will actually be the product in the future. Like what you're buying won't matter. It'll be the actual delivery is all that matters. When you get it, how you get it, how fast. And of course, we call that the Amazon effect.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
what does the future hold for that? I don't think we know.
Are you guys doing anything with drones? Is that
We
and
are
autonomous
using
vehicles?
them right now mostly for inventory. So
Inside the warehouse?
inside the warehouse, and really kind of piloting that.
Mm-hmm.
It has some of the same challenges we saw with RFID around density and what type of product it has. But we're sort of really focused on maybe that's the way to manage inventory integrity in the future instead of our fund cycle counting.
Yeah, it's got to be better in terms of just safety, because the drone can get
Yes.
up. The worst, or some of the biggest challenges in a warehouse in terms of claims is just people climbing.
That's right.
On higher equipment and
Yes.
falling.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a much better. What are you most bullish about? Like, what is of all the things that you guys are involved in, this massive scale? What is the technology or thing that you're most bullish on?
Well, it's going to be slightly different than you think. What I'm most bullish is I think people are back to actually thinking about supply chain as partnerships instead of transactional. We go through these cycles of insource, outsource. Should I use a 3PL? Should I not? And I feel like people are back to let's make some bets about what I want to do in my business. What do I want to control? Is it product? Is it marketing? Is it manufacturing? And then what am I going to use my 3PL for? And I think then we have to have the technology to be able to be an integrated part of our clients.
Are you seeing any movement since the Montgomery decision with the Supreme Court? Has there been any, with some of the stuff we're hearing is that shippers are realize that there's risks associated with it, and they want 1 degree of separation. They want a much more robust vetting process. Is that creating demand?
It is, and I think for us, we've had a pretty robust. Obviously, we have French government ownership, and so I feel like from a compliance perspective, we have that robustness. It's taking capacity out, as you well know. So that's kind of the biggest challenge. But we continue to double down on the compliance that we had. So
Yeah, I think the question is, how long does this cycle last?
That's right.
Any perspective on it?
Yeah, but it was time. I feel like I don't know whether it's a cycle or it's whether it's a natural resetting of supply and demand. I'm sort of
we've said
hoping the
we
latter.
feel it's the latter.
Yeah.
That's what I mean,
Yes.
I think the cycle is an easy term, but we've
Yes.
called it a super cycle
Yeah.
because it feels like we've got a long run. I love that you guys are owned by a railroad, by the way. I'm a huge fan of the railroads. Julie
Yes.
gives me a hard time about it. We love the
Chattanooga
railroads here.
choo-choo.
Chattanooga choo-choo. We love some trains down here. So, Laura, really appreciate you coming in. Thanks for
you.
joining us. I love Nashville. I love what you guys are doing. I love GEODIS and just the the brand that you've built you guys have built is just, it's really fascinating.
Thank you. That was great to be here. Great to see you.
Yeah, great.
Julie.
They're lucky
Okay.
to
Thanks
have
for
your
picking your
leadership.
home as Tennessee. We're big fans.
Exactly. Me too.
So appreciate it.
Great.
We'll be right back after these messages.
The drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and crews who keep the world moving deserve tools that work as hard as they do. That's what Samsara builds, technology for safer, more efficient operations, made with the people who do the work. Samsara, built with operators for operators. Learn more at samsara.com.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference. It's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts, 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head to head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else. The connections that change the trajectory of your business. The relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
Well, it's that time of the month. ISM's data is out, and it is ripping, as Julie tells us in her Sonar update.
Today's Sonar update, I'm going to focus on 2 things. Today is Tuesday, August 4th. One, an exciting new Sonar development. We have partnered with Retlia to produce a new index, RTLEG.USA. It's called The Register, and it gives a view of macroeconomic retail conditions. So very cool. Check it out in the Sonar UI. The second thing I really want to focus on and talk about is the new PMI numbers and ISM numbers that were released yesterday for July. So the PMI for July is 55.6, which is up 2.3% above June and a record since May 2022. Overall, for the PMI, new orders increased. Inventories remained too low based on sentiment. Manufacturing employment turned positive. And all of this is really signaling economic growth on the backdrop of GDP growth at 2.8%. The ISM number came in at 58.9. Customer inventories at 40.7, which is down 1.6%, showing they're going to need to replenish and restock those inventories. Overall employment was up 3.1% in manufacturing. Production increased to 58.5 in July, which is 6.3% up. Backlogs are up by 4.5%. And of those surveyed, 60% said that their companies are hiring, while the remainder said they are managing headcounts. But overall, orders are up. There is a need for replenishment in inventories. Backlogs are up. Everything is pointing to strength in these numbers and continued expansion in July, showing that we should be seeing some increased demand. We're not seeing capacity enter the market. This market has been really driven based on lack of capacity due to regulatory pressure. And this is signaling continued strength in manufacturing in our industrial economy, which should continue to generate freight. Obviously, commodities coming in, finished goods going out, heading to DCs, and then eventually to retailers or to the consumer or the ultimate purchaser. So all of that should be generating freight and looking towards continued strengthening that we have been talking about and potential increased demand coming in the end of August and then through a normal peak season in the fall. So we'll continue to watch it. But overall, all of the PMI and ISM numbers really came in incredibly strong. So excited to keep watching that. There's a great article in FreightWaves on FreightWaves website that was released today, really detailing the outcome of this month's report. So I encourage you to check it out. All right, so a reminder that the Sonar update today is brought to you by RXO Capacity Now. So as we hopefully see that continued increase in freight demand as we go through the rest of the year and into peak season, if your routing guide breaks down, if you need capacity now, be sure to reach out to RXO. We are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with our next guest, the CEO of Warehouse on Wheels, John Brooks.
Getting reliable capacity can be complicated. Let RXO make it simple. As the third largest provider of broker transportation in North America, RXO has the scale, resources, and expertise to help you tackle any shipping challenge. From a last-minute spot load to a managed transportation solution, from LTL to intermodal, from trained logistics experts to AI-powered freight automations, RXO has you covered from the first mile to the last mile. Start shipping on easy mode with RXO and get a smart solution to move your freight. Learn more at rxo.com/capacity.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
The super successful people are part of the 1%. They're part of that very, very small percentage. That's why I don't want you to do things that everybody's doing. I want you to do the small things that nobody else is doing. The people that are most successful in this business treat it like it's the only thing that's bringing income into their household. If you do that, then you'll have the same results. These people operate like they have no other chance. They have nothing else going. This is the only breadwinner that they have in play. I'm Adam Wingfield, and this is the FreightWaves Playbook. Become part of the 1%. Sign up for FreightWaves Playbook today.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference. It's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts. 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head-to-head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else. The connections that change the trajectory of your business. The relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. We're going to talk about trailers. We like to call them warehouse on wheels, and nobody more than to call them warehouse on wheels named his company after it. John Brooks is the CEO of the company Warehouse on Wheels. Welcome, John. How are you today, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, so Warehouse on Wheels is trailers. Tell us a little bit about the business.
Yeah, so in 2017, I started the business with our first 2 locations and about 4,000 trailers. And today we're at 37 locations and 35,000 trailers. We've built the business through a multitude of networks from now Montreal, Canada to Monterrey, Mexico. And our purpose is we take end-of-life over-the-road trailers and we repurpose them for flexible industrial storage into the supply chains of our 6,000 customers.
So the idea here is that these trailers that are no longer, they may be roadworthy, but they're no longer really in the best of shape to be roadworthy. You're using them for storage. What's the advantage of that over a traditional warehouse?
Yeah, so from an economic standpoint, we're generally 2 to 4 times less expensive on a per square footage basis, and we only require a 30-day evergreen contract, so not a 5, 7, 10-year lease. So the unit economics clearly lean in our favor. And to your point, yes, the trailers are roadworthy. We take those trailers in, we give them a fresh coat of paint, a fresh federal, so they're safe, dark, and dry, and ready to go to work.
What is the advantage? So cost advantages, but in other commodities, is there any commodities that work better for these trailers, or is it all price?
You know, I think it's a matter of just solving that short-term pain point in the supply chain. You know, we're all just one tweet away from our silent partners in Washington or some other disruption in the supply chain. And when that happens, that's really when our assets show up and serve best, is solving that short-term need, that pressure relief valve, that easy button for the guys and gals on the dock that are dealing with issues every day.
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. The flexibility there has to be incredibly beneficial. So you recently released a supply chain activity index. So can you tell us what it actually measures, what it does, and what prompted you all to come up with the index?
Yeah, we felt like we needed to share with the world kind of our view of the supply chain and how well or how things are performing, I guess. With 6,000 customers across a multitude of industries, from automotive manufacturer to retail, we thought we had a view. And so our index is really designed to highlight the level of goods activity throughout the supply chain. It's not another pricing index. And so what we did is we took a basket of measures that everybody already respects. I just saw it on the Sonar update. I'm looking forward to our July refresh because I think it'll even be more positive. And then we compared that to the on-off rent activity within our own business. And we think that it forms a view of how the underlying supply chain activity in goods are moving.
So it runs 0 to 100, if I'm correct.
Correct.
50 is neutral. June was, where was June? 42.2.
Yeah.
I see it in the graphic.
It's hard to see.
You said you're
Julie.
looking forward
The lines
to.
are real small.
Yeah. Well, it says 42.2.
I know.
Very
it's
large.
Good that it's up there,
on
but
there.
it is. Not just your eyes. Mine too.
I got new contacts yesterday. They might be worse. Anyway, so tell us. So we're below neutral. So what does that mean for the supply chain overall? What are you expecting for July?
Well, I think it really lines up with even the headline that was in the journal this morning about how our economy is almost becoming over-indexed to the AI-related infrastructure build. And so when you look through to the goods economy and think about housing starts and other just durable goods orders outside of the AI infrastructure build, there is still a general malaise in our opinion. I sometimes call it this wait but still move mindset that people need to grow, they need to perform quarter over quarter for their shareholders, but no one's making any real big bets. It's a lot like the information you guys just shared from Sonar about inventory levels. They're below ideal. And so, yes, I believe there will be a restocking as we build towards hopefully a more traditional peak season. But at this point, outside of those AI related builds and components, there's a general malaise out there.
So I want to continue to tie this together. Trailers being rented or then being, I guess, sent back to you, whatever the right words are for that, across your 37 locations. So why is that a clean read on freight flow as a whole versus just sort of inventory levels?
It's definitely indexed to inventory levels for sure. But I think it also represents, the lack of front end flow. The fact that, when you think about 2018, for example, the first time we dealt with this sort of tariff approach to things, there was a real focus and a real build ahead, if you will, on inventories. Whereas this time, as the administration came back in and started implementing these things, I think people took a bit of a wait and see attitude. They would take smaller bites at the apple, but it wasn't the big wave of goods. So in our minds, it's an indicator of the totality of the activity within the supply chain, from raw materials to ultimately getting it on the shelves.
So with it being sort of a relatively low number right now, still in the contraction, below 50%, I think it's really interesting, and I want your take on, despite that, you guys have had tremendous growth to 37 locations now and 36,000 trailers, I read. So how do you reconcile those two things?
Well, we've been consolidating the space first and foremost. I was a customer back in the day and saw an opportunity that I felt like this was a portion of the trailer's life that was a bit neglected. There were a lot of small mom and pop players out there serving this use case of storage and local cartage. And we went upon the mission of building a bigger version of that, a national footprint, or in this case, even now an international footprint. So that's really been the driver behind the growth. And then, quite honestly, as we build brand and solution awareness and people come to understand the true economics of the solution, when we win a heart and mind, we rarely lose it. And so a customer may have 50 trailers, they may size down to 25 or up to 100, but they never really give up that solution once they've had a chance to experience what we offer.
John, you got shoes framed in the background. What is special about those shoes? They look like Air Jordans. Am I reading that right?
They are. Much to my wife's chagrin, I have a Jordan problem.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure it's because I couldn't afford them as a kid, but those are actually custom warehouse on wheels Jordans. And I couldn't bring myself to wear them and scuff them up. So they're a great conversation piece with my management book there from Michael Scott as well, because I'm a big Office fan.
And you got a bunch of, looks like trucks in the background too, a nice toy collection.
So each time we buy a brand, we have kept that regional brand. And so that's the family of brands under Warehouse on Wheels. So our customers know us as Meisler Trailer Rental, First in Trailer Service, Advantage Trailer Rental. So Warehouse on Wheels really represents at this point the holding company of that family of brands.
That's kind of fun. You do a deal, a transaction, and you get a new toy.
There you go.
Like,
Exactly.
I think that's every man's dream is like, deal, business, let's make some money. Close it. It's better than a deal toy. Those that don't know what a deal toy is, like a plaque. This is actually even cooler.
A tombstone, yeah. I've got enough of those too from my 7 tours with different private equity firms. But yeah, I like the trucks better.
Now, are you guys private equity backed, or did you found it and funded it yourself?
So we're private equity backed. We're on our second sponsor. So myself and a group called Milton Street Capital out of Houston started building the business together. And then in 2021, we joined forces with Windpoint Partners, our current sponsor.
Is it harder to find the land? Is that the big issue? Or is it the trailers themselves that are the sort of growth constraint?
To be honest with you, neither are that hard because when we go to a market, we generally only need 3 to 5 acres of gravel. It's pretty simple. And then the used trailer market, now that we've come off the COVID abnormalities, there's a plethora of used trailers in the market. And so that's really our source is we're buying from the private carriers as they defleet and then modernize their fleets.
And would you, in terms of picking a new location, I know you're buying existing locations, are you scouting out new locations that you guys will
we just
organically build?
launched. We'll launch in the next 2 weeks in Chicago, of all places. We're kind of slow to get there. But really, you think about us along the 8 major corridors of transportation, and then probably in smaller towns just adjacent to those main thoroughfares. That's really where we thrive.
John, you're a brave man to put an industrial asset in Chicago, but it is the epicenter of freight. Not as big and important as Chattanooga is, but it is certainly up there. So,
right, I totally agree.
In terms of growth, what is the constraint on growth? Is it capital? Is it customer demand? Like what slows you guys down?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to be good stewards of the capital. Again, we're private equity owned, so there's not an infinite checkbook. But I think for us, there's really been little to no constraints. I mean, to go from 2 locations in roughly essentially 2018, we started in November of 17 to 37 today, I think is a real testament to what the model can be. And my vision for the organization is 100 locations and 100,000 trailers, and that's what we're building towards.
Wow. And do you have any metrics you can share with us in terms of what a trailer does in terms of monthly yield or annual yield?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the way we do things and operate, we're generally providing kind of an 8 times money on invested capital return on these trailers. So we've really built quite a mousetrap that I'm pretty proud of and something that we're continuing to scale.
So 8 times, is that over the life of that trailer in
Yes.
terms of in
Yeah,
deployment?
over the life of the
So
trailer.
when you're buying an asset, you're looking for it to basically yield 8 times what you guys invested?
Absolutely. And if you think about it, our use case is so much different than the over the road. The trailer rolls to the site, it gets loaded, it's generally stored close to the site, or maybe comes back to our yard to be stored. So it really minimizes the wear and tear on the asset, which allows that asset then to have a substantial useful life under our ownership.
But John,
Which
is it
makes
fair to
so
say-
much sense because at that point in the life of the asset is when the maintenance costs begin to rise, right?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
you're not going to have
For over the
maintenance
road.
nearly
It's
as
a
much.
great business model.
Yeah,
I'm
as
really
long as
enamored.
they are watertight.
Well, that's the thing I was
then-
wondering. Is
And he
there-
mentioned that.
Safe, dark, and dry is what we like to say.
Well, I'm
Say
just
it again.
curious,
What?
though.
Dark and dry?
Safe, dark, and dry.
Safe, dark.
So
and
I
dry.
am just curious, is there certain commodities that just isn't ideal for? Obviously,
That it isn't
refrigerated. But
Yeah, anything temperature controlled really doesn't fit for us. But again, we're supporting everyone from automotive manufacturers through apparel production, through to retail. Plastics manufacturers are a big customer as well because, again, in that business, a lot of times it's optimizing the raw material input, so playing the commodities market, and then optimizing the throughput volume so you don't have to change over tools and so forth. So that trailer flexibility to allow you to store that staged or even finished product gives you a tremendous lever to play as you manage those other key components of your process.
it's just
I
like
would even think through the
boneyards.
course
Like,
of
this
the
is so cool.
even through the course of a month, it would be like,
Well, you just have
end of month, end of quarter, getting
flexibility.
it off your yard and into one of these trailers wherever it needs to go. I would think the flexibility has got
The
to be the biggest
brilliance of
selling part.
this, John, I imagine permitting is so much easier than building a physical building, particularly in certain districts where they don't, they're not welcoming industrial real estate. You have the advantage of, you have portable units and they're classified as trailers. I imagine it gives you an enormous amount of advantage in permitting.
It absolutely helps. We're actually, we've got our EcoVadis score, so we're recognized as an environmentally friendly solution because not only are we helping you avoid the construction of the warehouse and the infrastructure and all the burden that goes with that, we're also helping to keep some of these trailers out of the scrapyard, relatively speaking. And so, again, viewed very positively from an ESG standpoint. I like to say that we make the procurement guys happy, we make the CFO happy, and we darn sure make the operators happy.
One man's junk is another man's treasure. That is the great thing here is these old units. I have to imagine, John, if we went to one of your yards, we would see some old school trucking names out there Like, we used to own a company called Paragon Leasing, which is a trailer leasing company. Occasionally, Julian, around town, you'll see a Southwest Motor Freight trailer that's out there. It always makes me happy. Usually it's been stripped.
Yeah, and
Like-
you could just still
So-
see like the
The ghost. Yeah, the ghost of.
Well, I have a
coloration,
rule.
yeah.
I have all these Brooksisms as you guys will get to know me, and one of them is 55 and 55. I want the trailer to look good at 55 feet away and 55 miles an hour. So we give it a fresh coat of paint all the way around, a fresh branding, and then a fresh federal. So again, back to my earlier point, it shows up safe, dark, and dry, ready to go to work, and it needs to look good from that distance.
So those ghosts of trailers past, those liveries that are gone on to, are no longer there.
Our intention is to cover those up. Now, will one slip through the cracks? And with all our acquisitions, quite honestly, there are some trailers we've probably acquired that I haven't even seen yet in our hold period because they stay on rent that long. Our average rental period right now is probably about 24 months. So
Wow.
And can those shippers transfer those between different facilities of theirs, or is it for a specific location?
they're licensed and federally certified, so they can roll on the road, and we'll help move them for them if they need us to.
Amazing business. I love businesses that just require creativity, brilliance,
Makes sense. It's a common
leverage
sense, too,
capital, recycling. John's got an amazing business. We're big fans of yours, John, here. I am.
Well, I am fans of yours as well. What you guys have built here and the service you provide to those of us in the space, I honestly am sincerely grateful for that.
Well, likewise. Well, if you get a hold of an old roadway trailer, just give us a holler. I'm looking for one. I think those are
I'll
cool.
send you
An
pictures.
I want the OG one, not the YRC one. I want the old school roadway. And it's prime, right before the big acquisition. John, thank you so much for coming on FreightWaves today. We'll have to have you back.
Thank you all very much. Have a good day.
What a great business. I love learning about businesses I hadn't thought about, and just like, that's a brilliant business model.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I mean,
Whole storage.
we would try to do, if we had certain customers or certain accounts, particularly dedicated accounts where we knew the trailers were not going to get as much use or had a very small radius, then that's where you want to put your lower cost, older trailers,
Higher,
right?
lower
Versus
quality.
the ones that are, and it
Makes
just
sense.
makes so much sense.
Well, we'll be back with Calvin Nolan, the one and only. He is the Rhino, and he's going to tell us all about the logistics market and everything going on. He's got a lot of opinion. He's going to share it with you here shortly.
At Saia, it's a yes isn't just an answer. It's how we're built, a way of working shaped by our people, our nationwide network, and over a century of know-how that keeps freight and business moving. From coast to coast and across borders, our full-service freight and logistics services turn yes into real solutions for real business challenges. Deadlines change, conditions shift. Saia is ready for it all. For every customer, every day, it's a yes.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference, it's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business: the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts. 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head-to-head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else. The connections that change the trajectory of your business. The relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. So much is happening around the logistics sector. Our guest, Kevin Nolan, will be up here in a bit to tell us all about the chaos that has become freight brokerage, his perspectives. There's no better entrepreneur that has started multiple billion-dollar-plus companies than Kevin Nolan. Kevin, are you with us, sir?
I am. How you doing? Good to see you guys.
I gotta ask, what's the tie? I don't even know if this is the same Kevin Nolan.
I told you guys when I saw you in Cleveland that freight brokerage is changing, right? We're getting a little more dolled up, and no, it's a big day to come on and be with you guys, and got to show the industry some respect. It's done me pretty well.
I love it. Keeping your word. You said you were going to clean up your, brokers needed to clean up their act and look like professionals, and you're really doing it.
He did. It's Kevin Nolan. I mean, the thing I love about Kevin is that you are very blunt in your statements, high energy, and not afraid to say what's on your mind.
Yeah, look, I think in an industry like ours that has so many moving parts and so many different things that are going to happen, you don't really have time for the BS. And you gotta get better every day, but you gotta call out what's the problems, and you gotta look in the mirror. And if you don't, then you're not going to last long in this industry.
So, Kevin, you started at C.H. Robinson. I think you and Drew Wilkerson, the CEO of RXO, were in the same office together. Did I get that right?
We were there at different times, but we were trained by the same group of men and women that were in the Columbia, South Carolina branch. And that is a true freight brokerage, entrepreneurial spirited office that was in Columbia. We had two managers there, Mike Borwick and another one named Kevin Harthen, that, they taught us how to broker freight the right way, be good leaders as well.
Well, there's obviously something right about that, because two of the largest top 5 freight brokers came out of that office, which is pretty astounding, the fact that you guys have done so much. Speaking of C.H. Robinson, Kevin, I got to ask, all of the, we have the Montgomery decision, we've got the lawsuit in Texas. What is the state of brokers? How are brokers thinking about
look, I'll be straight up. I bought more of the stock last week, right? They're the best at what we do. Maybe they could clean up their bedside manner a little bit, not talk about cutting jobs so much, not talk about AI so much, but when it comes to the biggest and the best freight brokerage in the industry, that's C.H. Robinson. And, the verdict, it's nuclear, right? That's the word everyone's using. 604, it's nuclear. What happens in a verdict like that, or a bomb that's nuclear? You kind of take inventory, you look around and you say, it feels a little off, but, CH feels pretty confident that they're going to be able to work through that and that the driver was not an employee. But yeah, lots going on. But I bought more, and if you look at Robinson over the history of time on the stock chart, it's a beautiful chart going up to that upper right quartile. And, the last 18 months, I think it's up 60% or so. So, maybe, you got a little bit of a return to the mean with the verdict. And maybe we had some people in the industry that wanted a reason to leave. I should have just called me and I would have held the door open. But
well, it does feel like Wall Street, I mean, this is not just CH, but all of the major transports, the truckload operators as well. Even when they were talking about how we're early innings, the fact that we're early didn't seem to dissuade Wall Street. It felt like it was they've moved on from transportation. That's one of the reasons I think CH has been beat up, is just largely because there's a sentiment against transportation, the cycle, and how Wall Street perceiving it.
Yeah, look, we're over, if you take in international shipping, warehousing, everything else, I believe we're still over 27% of GDP. Maybe healthcare is the only one that's larger and more fragmented, but it's a great place to play and have fun, and it's been very good to me, and I'm excited about the industry. It's actually younger than me if you take out deregulation from 1980, so or if you factor that in. So I'm excited about the space. I think some people needed a little reason to maybe take some profits or some chips off the table, and that looked like a reason, and a little bit of understanding, or maybe just saying there's some uncertainty in there. And investors, they love certainty, and so I like uncertainty. I'm a speculator player, so I'm pretty excited about, not obviously about the 604 or that verdict or anything else, but I'm excited that maybe some of the fakers that came in the industry from 2019 to 2024 or so, they didn't help our industry.
Yeah,
all that money that came in, I don't know how much, it made us better technology wise. It brought us more attention, but it didn't help in the sense of freight rates, right? That did not help.
It was a race to the bottom. I think freight brokers, in many ways, it was a race to the bottom. Brokers chased the market down. That's what they would do. And I've said, if I were in the shoes of a broker, I would have done the same thing. Obviously, truck drivers don't want to hear that. But the reality is, a lot of the bottom feeders, and talking capacity, folks that were not regulated, were taking advantage of the lax of regulation enforcement, really brought this industry to its knees. But it feels like there's a massive backlash now in Washington, even among the larger motor carriers that may have pushed for some of that deregulation, have realized what they've done.
Yeah, look, 2021, 2022, crazy times. I think that, and also there's just a certain amount of accidents that happen with all these moving parts. And then you had so many new people that came in that hadn't really operated, and the environment had elevated costs, and all they cared about was top line, right? How many loads I could get. Even if you're losing $800 moving a load of beer, like, that's a lot of risk you're taking, right? And I don't know what you're trying to accomplish other than showing that you got some load count, but it doesn't make sense to lose money if there's risk that's involved in this business, right? In the short term, you might do it because you're in a contract and you got to balance out and find new capacity, or then wait and talk to them. But long term, losing money at cheap freight just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree. We're seeing those brokers get squeezed in. We're seeing the capacity exit. So we talked about all of the earnings are saying we're in the early innings. The freight market is still early in this recovery. What's your take on the freight market for the rest of this year and next year?
So contract rates lead everything, right? And contract rate pricing happens October, November historically. Well, in the last 3 months, contract pricing has happened. There's never been re-rating that's been allowed in July. So while everyone thinks this might be a false start, or it's oil driven, or whatever else, we are in the early stages, because I know the RFPs that I've seen or are involved in, you remember that you quoted last year way too low, and tender rejection is so high because contract rates were not right for the year and weren't able to be carried on. And so, I think when October and November, when pricing comes around and shipping managers want to lock in good capacity, they're going to be way more open to rates that are higher compared to the last 3 or 4 years. So contract sets the industry, and then whatever gets rejected, then that's the basis for the spot market. So I feel pretty good about freight rates for the next 18 months.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot more mini bids are happening as well. Are you in order to?
And that's why your tender rejection is falling, right? Because contract is now acceptable, right? The shipper and the broker, or the shipper and the carrier have met and said, look, I want to work with you, but I need to work with you at this price. And the shipper says, okay, now. So, you've seen it, but it's not a huge amount because tender rejections are still in double digits. But
we dropped from 17% to 14%. So these are still elevated
in August, guys. I don't know if that's ever happened. Back to school's cool, but it's not that cool. I was moving my daughter into her place at Alabama. It was pretty busy at Target and Home Depot and all those places, but not 14% tender rejection.
That feels like she might get banned from the state going to Alabama. How are you going to what's the story there?
Oh man, I love it. Roll Tide. I'm a Bulldog. OTR still advertises like crazy, and a lot of my leaders in my businesses are from Georgia. But my daughter walked on that campus and said, "Dad, this is home, and I want to go here." And so you got to cheer for your money a little bit, Craig.
Yeah, I know. My wife is a Bama person. My son is at Baylor. He followed in my footsteps. So sick 'em Bears. So Kevin, the state of freight in terms of brokers have been put on notice, whether it is accepted, whether it is something welcome or not welcome. The fact is everybody's on notice. And it started with the Montgomery judgment, which was unanimous, followed by the fact that only 3 months later, we had the largest nuclear judgment in trucking history that's going to be paid out. It was a $900 million, but the company didn't even exist. It's interesting that a broker was involved in it. No more a bigger broker than C.H. Robinson. Feels like these judgments, these nuclear lawsuits are just going to keep piling up because juries seem to have a lot of sympathy for plaintiffs when there's a broker involved. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, look, plaintiff attorneys, they're some of the best businessmen and women I've been around, right? They don't take things unless they feel like they're going to make money on them. They only get paid if they win. They are smart, so they're going to look at the chain of events. The broker is part of that transaction, but so is the shipper. If we want to talk about tender rejections, was there a carrier that fell off that made everyone have to scramble? I don't know. I think there are so many moving parts in a load that the plaintiff attorneys are finding more and more aspects of it. Brokers, look, it's about who you work with. It's about making good decisions. Shippers, same way. Shippers need to make sure they're working with brokers that can handle and have defenses and have safety in place and all of these aspects of the business that are very important. Carrier selection. My carrier selection men and women, they know that sometimes I get angry at them because they're limiting capacity, but they're making right decisions. I say they protect the house, right? And like the other thing that's so crazy as a broker, we have to manage new line items we've never managed before. Fraud. Up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't have to put, more than 9 digits, 10 digits in fraud on my budget. Now, insurance costs. What's that line item going to be? It's one of the reasons why investors are a little spookish because they don't know, what brokers are going to have to budget for in insurance. So I don't think it's stopping. Again, there's a certain amount of miles that are run, and in those miles, accidents happen, and brokers are part of those miles that are run. And so, there's just these accidents are going to happen, and you have to make sure that you do what you can to get the right, safe people on, and then when they do happen, you handle it, and again, you care about the accidents, you care about the situations that happen, and you try to make things right.
What do you think insurance is going to do? I mean, there's been so many speculation. I've heard, this is right after the judgment. I don't know that this is actually played out, but as much as an increase of 10x was sort of the extreme.
Freight rates aren't going down. Okay, that's what I'll tell you. Freight rates are not going down. Who you pick in terms of putting on that load, look at who vets it the hardest. Insurance companies. If they're with the Great West, it's Cadillac's probably a great trucker on that, right? If they were sold Progressive out of somebody's apartment because you knew them and this or that, I mean, you got to pay attention to who the agent is, not only the market. All right. Secondly, factoring companies, 90% of truckers factor. You're giving them money if you're a factoring company. How much, look and see and just have these feelings of like, not all trucks are equal. Just because they came off of a load board or called in or whatever else, like they're not equal. And so you have to really pay attention and use the tools that are out there to look, because the government has come out and said, what's on the FMCSA, don't use it to judge. And I'm like, well, why have the ratings? Why have a satisfactory or a conditional or whatever else if it doesn't matter? But
I mean, the jury in the C.H. Robinson case, which likely gets thrown out on appeal. There's some weird technical.
I bet the plaintiff attorney didn't like 604. He would have liked an 80, right? Or a 70, but 604 is like, man.
Well, it forces CH to, CH has to go all the way. Like they have to go all the way.
Well,
because if they don't,
everyone does, right? Like that's okay. 604 was we're in this for 7 more years together. Let's all hold hands, guys.
But the interesting thing was, if you look at that, the jury decided that there was something like, and I don't remember the exact number, but 28% responsibility for C.H. Robinson. And if you took and multiplied the 604 by that number, it came out to right at C.H. Robinson's insurance limit, which I thought was a really interesting tell, that almost the jury was like, hey, let's go after the insurance number and let's try to maximize this for the family. That's at least what I read into it. I don't know if it was that intentional, but
look, Texas has a lot going on in big jury settlements. And, again, plaintiff attorneys are great businessmen and women, and they want to pick what field to play on. And that wreck happened in Mississippi, but it was, the jury was in Texas. So, again, I control what I can control, and that's working hard. That's, getting deeper with our customers and carriers and trying to provide products and services for them to stay on the road and keep moving loads so we can continue making money. But yeah, there's some uncertainty that's coming from this. And, look, I've been in the game for a long time, and I've seen a lot of crazy things come in and out of our industry. This one is one that definitely kind of put a cloud over the industry for the last, I don't know, call it a week or so. But C.H. Robinson had its best quarter ever. The brokers that I'm hanging out with and talking to feel pretty good about their business. And so, if we've got to put a certain amount per load aside for, things that are going to happen in a certain amount of miles that are run, like, okay, maybe we got to put more money aside for all of this. And, again,
I really like his conversation about insurance carrier specific vetting. Which insurance company is the fleet with? Because that may tell you a lot about how the insurance company, because you can't, even in the CH case.
Best vetters. I got sales guys that are trying to push insurance through to all kinds of people for truckers. And they are the best vetters at the truck insurance companies because they are, vetting and working and talking to these truckers. The big ones, if they have a certain number of units, they go meet them. They go on site. They look at their safety. They look at their hiring practices because they're putting their necks on the line as an insurance company. So I love vetting by insurance. Little secret. I'm sure my carrier relations team's gonna be like, "Why'd you tell them your secrets?"
I think that's great. No, that's actually what I was going to ask. Right. So if we can't go by the FMCSA safety rating, right? We're saying that doesn't work anymore. They're satisfactory. It doesn't matter. What should brokers go by? So I think that's a great tip. Look at their insurance provider, look at their factoring provider. What else should they be using?
Look, length of time in business, right? Loading someone who's got an MC number that's 2 weeks fresh, like that's crazy, right? And during peak times and peak, you got to make decisions and everything else. But in that situation, maybe you ask other brokers, hey, how many loads have you done with this carrier? Hey, this email and number that's come in, it's bigtruckin462@gmail.com. I'm about to send them a load con. Does that make sense? Probably not, but you might want to double check. So again, I would say, look at everything you can look at. There's a lot of great products and services that are out there. I think the way we talk to truckers is going to change over time, whether it's, using a third party to do your track and trace for you. But track and trace is a huge part of freight brokerage because, you know, we have to know, just like when you're following that Uber driver to your door or Lyft or whatever else, you're like, hey, he's a little far. He's not going to make it. I'm going to be late to the wedding if I go with this guy, well, or girl. And then it's like, hey, if I try this truck, I'm not going to make delivery. So I got this guy's, you know, way too far away. I got to find another one. So tracking and tracing is a very important part of the business. The truth of the matter is, like, less than 5% of the loads after pickup probably need some kind of human interaction. But we've, you know, because of the fragmentation, I think we've spent a lot of offshore expenses, a lot of third parties or whatever else. Track and trace is a huge part of the brokerage business. How it's done, I believe, needs to be maybe agreed upon by the shipper and the broker up front before the load's, you know, picked up.
Well, it's so much to, I mean, this is a whole new world we're in. Hey, Kevin, you got 5 trucks behind you. I see the Napa, good old Atlanta company.
I got a bunch. Check them out.
Oh, we got more. Okay, so who do we have? Is that Estes at the top?
No, this is GTE, which is a, you know, an old school trucking company. Reefer Group, no longer in business. Coca-Cola, proud to say, NTT.
Okay, I thought that looks like an Estes at the top. I can't see it. It's not zoomed in.
This guy
is that
right
a Waffle
here?
House? Is that a Waffle House?
The Waffle House Truck and Coke. We're going to put that there.
I see.
Right? So that's
Okay.
Good.
Good
But we
stuff
got
in
Coca-Cola
Atlanta.
all over the place with Atlanta. Jimmy Dean sausage, Pillsbury, Napa, Coca-Cola. The Napa CEO came in. He was here for a meeting, and he was like, you don't have one of my trucks. They got to put it up.
Kevin, you got a lot of food there. The Varsity or Waffle House? Which is it?
Waffle House all day long.
All day long. Cracker Barrel? I'd pick Cracker Barrel.
Barrel's a good brand. I got to tell you, I actually was, when they had that fallout, I was going to try to put a group together to buy that thing. That is a great brand.
We're big fans of, I'm a big fan of Cracker Barrel over Waffle House. I've had too many experiences at Waffle House, we'll say. Kevin Nolan, thank you so much for joining us. It is football season. The great thing about Kevin is he's not only a great freight broker, built multiple billion-dollar companies, but he is a Southern man. Through and through. So, love it. Anyways, we'll be right back. We got Gene Seroka talking about the second half. He's going to give us a sense for how the container flows are going for the retail peak season. He gets the preview of that right after these messages.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
The super successful people are part of the 1%. They're part of that very, very small percentage. That's why I don't want you to do things that everybody's doing. I want you to do the small things that nobody else is doing. The people that are most successful in this business treat it like it's the only thing that's bringing income into their household. If you do that, then you'll have the same results. These people operate like they have no other chance. They have nothing else going. This is the only breadwinner that they have in play. I'm Adam Wingfield, and this is the FreightWaves Playbook. Become part of the 1%. Sign up for FreightWaves Playbook today.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference. It's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, The sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts. 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head-to-head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else. The connections that change the trajectory of your business. The relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
All right, welcome back to FreightWaves Today. We've already had quite a few great guests, and we have 2 remaining. We're going to be joined by Gene Seroka, the director of the Port of Los Angeles, talking about the busiest June ever at the port. And then we're going to be joined by our own Eric Kulisch to talk a little bit about air freight. So we still have some great guests coming up for the remainder of the show. Do we have Gene with us? Okay. So, all right. While we're getting Gene ready, we're going to talk a little bit about a sitrep that we just published at Sonar, and really relevant based on some of the things we just talked about with Kevin Nolan. So it's called the Compliance Squeeze, and it's really talking about current environment coming out of all of this litigation and the additional pressures being created on brokerage and the additional regulation. Who are the winners and losers sort of in this freight market? So it can be accessed in the FreightWaves Market Monitor at getfreightdata.com or within the Sonar UI under SitReps. But really, the headline numbers here are rejections are up 177% in the trailing last 12 months based on capacity exiting the market, with volume only up 7%. So as we've said, this is a story of capacity leaving the market, not necessarily one of increased demand. And there's these 3 regulatory pressures that are really changing the shape of our industry: CDL schools and training fraud crackdown, ELP enforcement and non-domiciled CDL rulings, and then this Montgomery ruling and the litigation that's come out of that, as well as the nuclear verdict. So all of this leads to increased pressures, higher insurance costs, stronger carrier vetting becoming necessary. So really, who are the winners and losers coming out of this? Incredibly hard for small fleets and marginal brokers to absorb these additional costs and to get freight. So we'll continue to see them leaving the market. This, in many cases, has been a good thing for those large carriers. They're going to be the winners in this scenario, the large compliant carriers, as well as dedicated capacity providers. And then I think the other big winner is well-capitalized agent-based networks, where they can help carry the insurance costs and take some of that burden off of some of the owner-operators that would like to go into an agent-based model to give them that sort of layer of protection. So I think we looked at it from all 3 of those angles. We looked at freight tech, and that certainly tech providers who provide compliance services, software, fraud prevention, data in a really volatile freight environment are going to continue to be winners in this market. And then those who might struggle a bit are really those load matching platforms and those who are not providing that level of carrier vetting or protection that many would want or need in this environment. All of this leads to shippers ultimately probably paying more and demand continuing. We'll see what happens with demand, but capacity continuing to remain tight. And we were saying after we talked to Kevin about, we've talked all of this time about barriers to entry and how hard it is based on all of this new regulation and that capacity is just not coming back in the market. And then if you are a new carrier, as he mentioned, with a new MC number, where are you going to get freight?
You can't. And I think that's going to be the problem, is you can't prove yourself if you don't have a rating by the FMCSA. How are you going to get one? It's definitely going to be challenging, which, look, barriers to entry are probably a good thing. Laura Ritchey talked about the fact that, we asked her about the cycle. She is the CEO of GEODIS. Asked her about the cycle, and she said, I don't think this is a cycle. This is a shift.
Yep.
A permanent shift in the market. And her point is like, look, there's all this new regulation, all this tightness. There's a new appreciation for domestic sourcing, new supply chain build out, a new economy. And, we're right on the ground floor of all of it, and it's going to be very good. Speaking of imports, there's no better source than the man, Gene Seroka, who runs the Port of LA. Gene, welcome to FreightWaves today.
Welcome back to FreightWaves today.
You were an inaugural guest.
That's right. So excited to be back, Craig and Julie. Good to see you both.
We're glad to have you back. You get the best view of imports into the United States as the most important port in the U.S. Certainly get to see what is going to happen across the United States. Tell us what the expectations are for the second half.
Well, what we saw in the first half was a very savvy importer who could see some view of certainty and then speed the cargo into the country. So that's what we kind of saw with a really good May, an outstanding June of over 1 million container units, and even July looks like it may come close to that number as well. So on the retail side, inventories look good, encouraging for back to school, fall fashion, and we're all hopeful for a strong holiday season. We'll get into that in a moment as well. But I don't see us dropping off a cliff. We talk a lot about retail cargo that comes through the Port of LA, but we have about an equal amount of containers that are parts and components for American factories, and they've been steadily moving forward as well.
Gene, that's an interesting point. I mean, the White House has talked about the fact that this is a shift in import activity, that it's really capital goods that have been driving a lot of the growth in imports, not, as I think the the White House economic director had commented, it's not stuffed teddy bears, it's capital goods for production. Thoughts on that in terms of increase of the mix of products?
Not the complete story there, but retail is strong across a variety of sectors. And the biggest growth market we see is the fulfillment sector. So as you both know, we've got about 2 billion square feet of warehousing in the Inland Empire, about 50 miles away from this port, which warehouses, transloads, cross-docks goods for American retailers, but it also is the center of fulfillment merchandise that we all buy online. And whether it's for delivery to the home, office, or curbside pickup, that business is absolutely booming. But the manufacturing sector, those inputs that go to American factories, are moving steadily as well. Then there's a third piece here, and this is the AI boon with respect to data centers and hardware that goes into those locations. Okay, that's moving forward as well. But we've yet to hear from the Magnificent Seven and their leadership exactly what this is all going to mean. Yet every 4 containers that move through this port create a job. So we're very pleased about all of these segments right now.
Yeah, so much. I mean, the distribution, we always watch the Inland Empire. So we watch port activity at your port and your sister port there in Southern California to see what the seasons are likely to look like over the next couple of months in terms of domestic surface freight. Inland Empire, it's interesting watching the flow of traffic, of demand go from the ports over to the Inland Empire. But when we start to see that Inland Empire start to ramp is when we know that the pumping is coming into the country, that those goods are starting to flow. We're not seeing that just yet. When will we expect to see the flow of cargo out of the Inland Empire that really drives the rest of the country?
I believe you'll start seeing that late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and here's why. Many of these retailers on the finished goods side brought in cargo earlier than some of us would say is normal time because they had that window of opportunity with respect to certainty. The Section 122 tariffs that were in place for 150 days expired on July 24th. We also saw a lagging effect of the vessel fuel surcharges only pick up 3 and 4 months after the war in Iran started. So you had a lagging effect there of the fuel combined with the tariffs on a temporary basis. Folks knew what their landed cost was, how cargo was going to flow from factories in Asia here to the West Coast and specifically Southern California Gateway. So you had a buildup of that inventory on the retail side a little bit earlier than normal. That will start to flow through the country end of September, beginning of October. But also in between, You've got the all-important back-to-school season and fall fashion startup, which will also see some early indicators of how strong this American consumer continues to be.
We had Laura Ritchey, the CEO of Americas for GEODIS, was on earlier. She talked about a couple of interesting things. One is ocean capacity is hard to come by. The ocean container lines have pulled some, they've blank sailed. That is actually causing some challenges in terms of products. Businesses are having problems getting their hands on their inventory, their raw materials. Are you hearing that as well, Gene?
Well, this is always a game of capacity versus demand. And while I don't see anything really difficult in the marketplace, vessels are sailing quite full. And anything over 95% usually yields profit for that vessel voyage. So the shipping lines are going to be really keen on capacity utilization. And the second piece is that we've got over 200,000 cargo owners that call the Port of Los Angeles home on an annual basis. No one has more than a 5% share, even the largest American importer. There will be spots where folks have trouble getting space, and space becomes a premium. But I don't think it is a blanket effect across the entire industry. Vessels are full, good utilizations, prices are stable to the higher end, and American consumers continue to buy.
Well, as Julie reported the ISM data this morning, just the ISM data is out there. She talked about how robust that number is, highest since May of 2022. It's very clear that the industrial economy is starting to ramp, which is something we haven't really seen for the last couple of years. It's starting to show up. Is that changing? You talked about the mix changing a bit, but is that really changing the level of activity, the flow of cargo across the ports, or is it going to be just a systemic increase from what we've seen in years past?
Yeah, well, this is a good news story as well. And although manufacturing has continued to move in a good direction, it's not had the peaks and valleys that we've seen in other segments. So again, inflation is not runaway, but it's higher than most of us would like. Jobs creation is not super strong, but you haven't seen layoffs and that segment falling off a cliff. So if we get a little bit of a boost here on the industrial side, although 1 month snapshot doesn't necessarily make a trend, we'll take it. It's good news.
Well, I mean, it was what, 5 months in a row that 7 months in a row, right? 7 months in a row, Gene. So I don't know. It feels like a trend. Feels like things are pumping on ISM, showing positive data. The railroads are seeing robust activities in commodities. It does feel like the industrial economy is starting to cook.
And it's not bad. Again, we've got a couple of other pieces that we watch here, and no one segment in a snapshot in and of itself boosts the American economy. But that being said, with 70% of our GDP made up of how much you and I buy, we're holding there as well.
What are you here? I know you give briefings and regularly talk about it. So what are you hearing that shippers need to know about tariffs and what the landscape looks like for the rest of the year?
Well, there are a couple things that we keep in mind. One is the willingness of the American consumer to keep purchasing in light of higher prices. Here in Southern California, price at the pump is up 25% year over year, and the price of the all-important diesel product is up nearly a third. About 70% of our cargo moves in and out of this port over the road by truckers, many of which are small to medium-sized businesses. Not everyone can absorb those costs. We got to keep a watchful eye on this. Second, having lived and worked in the Middle East for 5 years and keeping close contact with our business colleagues, what I can say is that although only 10% of worldwide freight moves in and out of the Arabian Gulf, Red Sea, and East Africa, it's taking 95% of the attention from industry leaders, trying to understand what fuel quantities will be, and not just on the ship side, but the all-important jet fuel, of which Southeast Asia and the European Union have a high component of procurement from the Arabian Gulf countries on the refined products. Here closer to home, our 7 marine oil terminals have pivoted from gasoline to diesel to blending the air product much more than they have on a regular basis. Now, while we supply about 2/3 of jet fuel to LAX airport through an intricate series of pipelines, we're also sending out barges to Southeast Asia and to Europe from LA, which is not a common occurrence. So you've got a lot in front of us right now and some encouraging news out of Washington that we may be enhancing talks with Iran on some sort of completion. But we've also watched this story develop over the past 6 months. We got to be cautious here as well.
Well, we can't get overly excited. The White House tweets that we've got a deal, it seems like on the weekend. So all the strikes feels like it starts with the week on Friday, and then by Sunday when the markets open, there's a peace talk deal. We'll see. Gene, there's been a lot of noise around the Jones Act. Obviously, this impacts your ports, but also impacts the rest of the country. Any thoughts on the Jones Act?
Well, we've seen some foreign flag services called not only at our port, but around the country, but it really hasn't moved the needle because what we heard originally was this waiver of the Jones Act was to help relieve some of the pressure on gasoline prices for American consumers at the pump. And while we've seen the world market shift up and down based on announcements, the waiver on the Jones Act really hasn't alleviated the pressure on that yet. Yet, all the opportunities that are in front of us and the companies that we're working with worldwide and right here at home are trying to do our level best to help support that American consumer and business.
Yeah, the domestic mariners are not happy with the Jones Act exception.
Yeah. So, Gene, we talked about a lot of the remaining uncertainty, right? Fuel costs, trade, all of those things. People tend to try to ship their freight when conditions are favorable. What are you seeing? What are you expecting for the rest of this year? I know you talked a little bit about expecting strong retail through the back end, but what are you expecting as far as imports and volumes go, in your port specifically, and how are you guys preparing?
Generally, on the import side, Julie, folks are cautiously optimistic. And what I hear from manufacturers, tiered suppliers, and retailers is that many of their operations teams continue to do this scenario analysis that they've been going through for the past year and 3/4. If these tariffs hit, if this timing is such, and if the economy continues to move, what is the impact on my supply chain and how should I prepare for that? What I have not heard yet are mass cancellations of purchase orders, whether it be on the retail side or the inputs for American factories. Very good there. Auto market is a big piece of what we do here on the manufacturing side at the Port of Los Angeles. And with the average price of a car over $50,000 US, tariffs not only on imported cars, which is a small percentage of the overall annual sales, north of 17.5 million units here in the United States, but it's the parts and components that go into the American factories that are assembling those cars that are pushing the costs upward. So back half of the year, steady as it goes for right now, but it also changes based on any policy announcements that we hear that have yet to be defined.
Yeah, it's so much noise. Gene, there's been, speaking of just regulatory changes, regulatory announcements, the truck driver regulatory environment hasn't been tighter in perhaps years in terms of what the administration is doing, the FMCSA. We're getting reports that this is impacting drayage capacity around ports. I don't know what you guys are seeing in LA, but it's certainly a story that we're following. How is that? How are you guys managing that?
Keeping a really close eye on this, but realistically, we've got 680,000 commercial driver's licenses that have been issued in the state of California. 17,000 trucks are registered to do business at the Twin Ports here in LA and Long Beach, and about half of those folks call on our ports at least once a week. With the 17,000 CDLs that were canceled for regulatory reasons emanating out of Washington, it has not impacted the port's business. We've got enough of an inventory and buffer of talent and assets to be able to move this cargo. Yet it was 17,000 folks that are no longer working in this sector, which is concerning. but not from a capacity standpoint here at the Twin Ports.
I mean, one of the nice things about the ports in Southern California is just the infrastructure, the railroad specifically. Got to ask this. We've been covering this national largest merger in railroad history. Any thoughts about that in terms of how do you feel about the merger? Any sense for your thoughts on what this means for the port?
Yeah, I've been pretty public on this, saying that if this merger were to take place, it gives us access to customers, consumers, and businesses in the Eastern time zone on a nonstop service. And I think it was Jim Vena who said at a big dinner speech in Chicago this summertime that if you want to go from LA to New York, you're going to take a nonstop flight to JFK. You're not going to go fly to O'Hare, take a bus down to Midway, fly into LaGuardia, and make your way back into Manhattan. If we can have nonstop services to the eastern seaboard from the West Coast, it gives us a whole new market to attract based on speed and consistency. I would argue the same for our partners and ports on the East Coast of the United States to give them access to the Pacific time zone. That being said, the companies must exceed the mark, not just meet it, when it comes to the regulatory oversight and approvals, as well as the customer base. Many that I talk to still remember the UP-SP merger from 1996 and the troubles operationally with the coming together of those two companies. They don't want history to repeat itself. So let's exceed the mark on both these areas. But for the Port of Los Angeles, I think this would be outstanding, not only for the gateway here, but for the American economy in general.
Well, Jim Vena was in studio last week. We had the NS CEO as well. They were very bullish. Jim basically said it's going to get done. Now, of course, he's talking his book, which is fair, but he was very bullish on believed that the STB was going to rule in their favor and allow this merger to take place. And his case is exactly what you said, is point-to-point transportation. This is better for the consumer. It's an improved product. You know, we'll see. There's still some organizations, particularly in the bulk side, that are adamant. And I guess it's ultimately going to be up to the STB to decide what exactly this means for those businesses as well as impact to consumers.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why both the regulatory and that court of public opinion with the customer cannot be discounted. These folks are the bread and butter of this transportation network across the country. They've got to be on board as well.
Now, Jim, we had the chief of staff of BNSF. They're not supportive of the merger for obvious reasons. They believe it's bad for consumers. They believe it will be bad for the overall economy, is their take.
And there's an argument out there. Competition spurs, a lot of creativity. Competition also spurs public comment. And realistically, the argument on the other side is that you'll have fewer choices and higher prices. You may not see the service details that you want. And that's an argument that has to be answered by both the UP and the NS.
I would make the case, Julie, that with trucking capacity getting cracked down, it's going to get harder and harder. I mean, we have a demographic problem. You're not this issue of cracking down on non-regulated entities is a big problem for drivers. Like, this is going to help the flow of cargo from the ports. And look, I don't think any port in the United States has benefited as much as the Western ports with the rise of China. Gene, we are seeing market share moves from China, not necessarily the volume of containers, a little bit off, but really just the shift of Vietnam, Thailand, other parts of Asia, and throughout the world have benefited from a lot of market share. Any part of the world that you're exceptionally bullish on right now?
Yeah, realistically, when I look out my window, I see a $33 trillion economy in Asia. And while business to and from China over the last 10 years has dropped by about a third, Vietnam has quadrupled in their business. And as policies have changed, importers, exporters have been super inquisitive about where can I source my products? Who are my customers going to be in the future? And how can I get there ahead of the curve? We're no different here at the Port of LA. We're out there challenging ourselves to go after every piece of freight possible and aligning ourselves with service providers, getting non-stop vessel sailings from Southeast Asia to LA, because that speed component has always been so important to our strategy here. And unfortunately, because of the security concerns in the Middle East. The Suez Canal receipts down 80% over the past 4 years. And again, discussions about the Panama Canal, you're seeing cargo continue to flow because that speed component is in place. The transit time differential is in our favor. And the longer transit means more fuel burn. Fuel burn at bunker prices that are 60% above where they were back on February 28th make decisions on the desk of supply chain executives that much more important than they were even 6 months ago.
Well, Gene, thank you so much. Always great to see you. Best of luck in the second half. We'll have you back in a couple of months to talk about the holiday peak season. We know it's going to be a big one. So I really appreciate it. Gene Seroka, the Port of LA Executive Director. So we're moving it from ocean containers to air. We are a multimodal show here at FreightWaves today. And we have Eric Kulisch who's going to talk about something called ghost fleets. What is going on, Eric?
Ghost freighters?
Ghost freighters, yes. Sorry. I'm reading the screen. It says ghost fleet, but never mind that. What are these ghost freighters?
Yeah, well, I'm calling them ghost freighters. That's what I've dubbed it. Lufthansa Cargo has, they're one of the largest all cargo carriers in the world with a fleet of 777s, but they also been operating for a few years, these narrow body Airbus A321 freighters, and, kind of in a regional network in Europe and North Africa, targeted supposedly at e-commerce type of companies. And they shut down the airline in April because they didn't fly those planes directly. They used Lufthansa's sister company called CityLine. And Lufthansa, with the fuel prices went up with the Iran war, they shut down CityLine. It was a little passenger carrier in Europe. So now there's nobody to fly the planes, and the planes have still been grounded. Lufthansa tells me, yes, we're going to return those planes to commercial service. We're just trying to figure it out. But I think the proof is in the pudding. I discovered, and they confirmed, that they stripped the livery, the brand logos off the plane. They're just painted in a neutral color now. And that doesn't really, signal that they're eager to use the planes. Or, why would you do that if you're going to put them in service in a month or two? So my sources and my reporting shows that they're either, trying to return those planes to the lessor, which is very difficult, and they'd have to eat some big termination costs, or they're trying to sublease the planes to another carrier, which is also proving difficult. So they're kind of stuck right now, but I guess the A321s just haven't met performance expectations. The demand's not there. And so just kind of interesting, how that's evolved.
Eric, why should we care? Why, if we're watching this and you're seeing the libraries, why is that an important story?
I think it's important because, Lufthansa Cargo, or Lufthansa, is one of the preeminent, most efficient all cargo operators. And, this kind of also shows that this converted A321 freighter is having a hard time breaking into the narrow body freighter market because the Boeing 737-800 is more popular. It's been in service a lot longer. And, there's just a glut of these planes. There were so many of them built, these narrow body freighters built coming out of the pandemic, and there's too many of them. And so it's hard finding a market for them.
So you think that they're just stripping them because they can't put them, they're not the right products for the mission? Is that sort of the
Yeah. So, it seems like analysts basically, the only place they're really working well is in like high volume e-commerce corridors, where you're shuttling back and forth, and they're high capacity, they're filled, and milk runs back and forth. So if you're, Qantas is running these and getting more running for Australia Post, and they seem to like them. But short of that, for general cargo and most other operations, they don't seem to be fitting the bill. The maintenance costs are higher than expected. They take more fuel than the 737-800s, and it's just not, and if you can't pack them to the gills, then they're not economically as viable.
So if
Eric,
these were being marketed or originally were supposed to be used for that e-commerce middle mile delivery, is it just that demand didn't materialize, or is it just poor operation of them in that portion, in that part of the supply chain?
I mean, I think there's probably some demand, but in Europe, you've got road networks that work well. Lufthansa's got a big passenger air network they can put parcels and other shipments on. So, the demand to fill those planes isn't quite there. And then if you have higher operating costs, it makes it a little difficult to justify the economics, I'm guessing.
So Eric, is this a bad sign for Airbus? I mean, this Airbus-Boeing sort of rivalry that's has played out for decades. It feels like the A321 was in many ways the 737 of if you sort of use the equivalent, sort of the workhorse of the fleet. Is this a bad sign for Airbus?
I don't think so. Most of these are converted freighters, so not original production freighters. Some of them are converted by an Airbus joint venture with another company and some other people. But people are really gung ho or bullish on Airbus coming out with their all new next generation A350 large wide body freighter that's going to compete with the Boeing's 777X, the next generation freighter from Boeing. So people think that plane's going to be really good. It's just this converted version of the A321. Just the economics don't pencil out really well unless you're working in one of these high volume e-commerce corridors, for an express operator. So, and there's just a glut in the market, and the 737 had a bit of a head start.
So Eric, where in terms of Airbus, the defense spending is interesting because they're benefiting from a lot of the the NATO de-Americanification of defense spending. Airbus is a big beneficiary. Do we think that part of the sort of lineup for Airbus is going to shift towards defense? Is that where their investments are going?
I don't know about a shift. I mean, I know obviously Airbus does provide cargo aircraft and refueling aircraft for the German and NATO air forces. So, I think they'll get more business from the militaries over there, but I don't think they're, stripping out or shifting commercial production or investments to accommodate that.
Well, I miss the 380. That's my favorite airplane. That's the big double-decker. You've seen it, right? These massive birds that have two. So you have the 747 that has this sort of that hump. This is full double. Eric, have you ever been on a 380?
No, I haven't. But they're not very good for cargo though. But they're great to fly in, I hear.
They're not good for cargo because of just the way they're built? Like, what's the challenge for cargo?
Yeah, I just think so many passengers, 2 decks, and so much luggage, and just not.
You're talking about in the belly, right?
They don't have
correct
the belly cargo. But what about? Is anyone flying these 380s for of just an empty fuselage, or is that hard because you can't stack?
You mean like as a freighter?
Yeah. Has anyone done it?
No, I think that was explored. I think memory serves me, FedEx explored with Airbus making up an A380 freighter, but decided not to. Didn't work for them. But so there was some consideration, but no one ever did a freighter.
Yeah, I missed the Myra, the big Antonov that, rest in peace, that got blown up very early in the Ukrainian war. It's the biggest airplane in the world. And I actually worked on a project years ago where we were loading truckloads product into an Antonov freighter for a concert, the Rolling Stones. A lot of moving stuff.
Yeah, I mean there's still a bunch of those AN 124s. They're not the Mira that was the world's biggest, but these AN 124 Russian-built freighters. They're operated by Antonov out of Ukraine. They're still operated around the world. There's only a few of them left, but they're workhorses for sure.
Amazing. I love I prefer Airbus. I'm an American, but when I get on a plane, it feels like Airbus is a little bit nicer. It just is. I mean, just saying. Well, appreciate it, Eric. Thanks for joining us. I know so much is
Anytime.
happening in the air cargo world, and we're going to keep, speaking to Gene, talking about the robustness, Julie, of just container flows and how bullish I think the container market has been relative to expectations. Air freight's seeing the same thing. It's a little surprising that Lufthansa would be taking capacity out of the market, but I think it's because they're not international. A lot of the air freight market right now is Asia to Europe, Asia, mostly Asia to the United States because of the whole semiconductor and sim chip world. That's the big flow of cargo.
Yeah, I don't know enough about air freight to have a really good opinion on that, but it is interesting to hear that it has been robust. So this was a surprising story to me to hear that they're parking.
Well, again, it's all about lane. It's like in the lanes that matter, you can't get enough lift capacity out of Asia to the United States simply because of the AI data center world. So much to really talk about. We have a big show the rest of the week. We have GXO CEO is going to come on. We also, tomorrow, we have James Gellert. He's the Rapid Ratings Executive Chairman, and Jay Edlin, Wove's co-founder and CEO. Got a great show tomorrow. And you know what tomorrow is? It's Wednesday.
Rail data.
Rail data day. We'll see you tomorrow at noon.